Hello, my name is Sean Phillips. This is my case study for Module 13 for EDL 851. A good teacher turns bad. Stress at home causes problems at school. Before we get started, a quick summary of this case. In this case, we have a teacher, Mrs. Horton, that teaches at Crestview Elementary School. Crestview is in a rural community, and the staff there seems to be a veteran staff. Lots of people have been together for a while. But what's going on here is Mrs. Horton has shown a sudden change in her demeanor. She has become less professional with parents. Her environment in her classroom has changed dramatically to where students are not wanting to come to school. They're crying about it and even maybe not even wanting to eat at home, losing sleep over it. So, there's just some overall issues that are going on. In this case, we also have Mrs. Wilson, Jean Wilson, who is the principal, who is trying to figure out how to handle this situation. And it's our goal in this project to be able to figure out a plan of action for us. Now, the whole event culminates at the very end with a meeting with an individual parent, Mrs. Stafford, where during the meeting, Mr. Stafford says that he would like to have his child removed and has some accusations against Mrs. Horton. And Mrs. Horton loses her cool and just screams out that he's a liar. And that's where our case leaves off. Mr. Stafford leaves and Mrs. Wilson is there to handle it. So, what would I do? Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out what is the problem and analyze that problem. So what do we know? Well, the first thing we know is the school environment. We know the school in general is in good shape. We know that it has above average test scores. We know that attendance is good. And we also know that parents seem to be generally happy with what's going on. We also know that there is a change in Mrs. Horton's demeanor. Mrs. Horton has been a good teacher in the past. In fact, she was teacher of the year at one point. So we know that she has the skills in order to do well. However, there's been a big change. Why has that change happened? Well, some staff have said that it's because her husband has left her and she's forced to raise two teenage boys by herself, which would be very, very stressful. But she's gone then from that over the course of more than 1 year. This all started happening last year, but through the course of last year and then into the first 6 weeks of this year, we see that good demeanor and that good teaching presence has changed. And we know that now there are people complaining, kids upset. So the teaching environment has definitely changed. We know that Mrs. Horton is aware that her demeanor has changed and that it's been brought to her attention. Mrs. Wilson, the principal there, has had an individual meeting with Mrs. Horton about specifically related to a new reading program that's going on at the school. Mrs. Horton did not favor this change at all, and even though the principal, Mrs. Wilson, had a meeting with her, Mrs. Horton still seems to not have been impacted at all by this meeting and continues to show her displeasure. So Mrs. Wilson has been the principal there for 3 years, so she's been there a little while and should have a good relationship with all of the staff, and hopefully she'll be able to handle this situation. So, what do we need to know to be able to figure this out? Well, the first thing we need to know is, why does this continue? We know that there has been a meeting already with regard to how she is behaving related to the reading program. Why does this continue to happen, and why is this showing up in the classroom and I keep hearing reports of it? We know that Mrs. Wilson has observed a few times, but and hasn't really noticed anything, but yet is there, if there's smoke, is there fire type of thing? Is there something going on at work that might be causing some type of interference with her teaching duties? Okay, we know that her preparation seems to be lacking. She's been late to school. So is there something going on at school that might be causing some of these issues? Something that we can change that might ease her load a little bit. And then we also need to know what her side of the story is. As an educator myself, I know that there have been many times that a parent only catches one side of the story from a student. Are there things that we need to know about an individual student from her perspective that we could relay to parents to kind of make all this, to make both sides understand a little bit better where everyone's coming from? And then, how can we help her be more successful as a teacher? If things aren't going well, our job is to help her. So, are there things that she wants some help with, where we can help her develop better as a teacher? So the problem overall that we need to figure out is, how can I help Mrs. Horton maintain professionalism and also improve the learning environment for her students? So the plan of action, what am I going to do? Well, the very first thing that I would do is immediately after the meeting with Mr. Stafford before school, I would immediately not let Mrs. Horton go to class. In in the case study, it mentions that even after the meeting, she still seemed to have an aggressive posture, obviously in not a good mood to go meet children. So I would find someone to cover her class for a little bit and invite her into my office where we can cool her down and talk about a few things. So when I meet with her, some things that I might talk about are there any personal issues going on that I need to know about? We've heard from other staff members that there could be an issue with her husband leaving, but she hasn't directly said that to us, at least not from the text that we read. So is there something that she would like to share with us there? Also, are there some student issues that we need to be aware of? Is there a problematic child or some children that are having issues that we can help with? And then lastly, how can we help? Our job as administrators, like I mentioned before, our job is to help teachers be successful. So what can I do in order to make this situation better for her? And then after that, I would explain what our expectations are. I know everyone gets frustrated at times, but as a teacher, we do expect you to be professional. Okay, we can't be blowing up at parents. We need to provide an environment where kids want to come to school. I'm not saying that you can't have discipline. However, I am saying that, students shouldn't be crying to come to school, shouldn't be, not sleeping or what have you. So we need to get these expectations explained and know that those expectations need to be upheld. Next, what I would do is I would try to come up with a buddy teacher for Mrs. Horton. We all have a teacher in every building that is a veteran teacher that knows their way around teaching very well, is very calm demeanor, that's easy to get along with. If I put Mrs. Horton with this one, with a buddy teacher like that, then I feel like it's going to be a relationship there where we can get a little bit of collaboration or even allow Mrs. Horton to, vent to even. So a buddy teacher I think will be a great thing where they can meet every couple of days or something like that. Next, I would set up a meeting with me and specifically through clinical supervision, okay, where we talk about things ahead of time. I'll come in and observe, evaluate, okay, then have a post-conference, all the different steps that go involved with it. Even possibly, if it's okay with Mrs. Horton, setting up a walkthrough where I can just come through and look for a few key things and set up some professional development, specifically focusing on relationship building and dealing with stress. Now, as far as the supervision and walkthrough go, I feel like it's extremely important for us to talk with Ms. Horton and both of us be on the exact same page of what we're looking for, what the purpose is, okay? Because as we've learned through our course, it's very important for teachers to have the feeling that they are involved in the process. And also in walkthroughs, we don't want it to look like it's a gotcha type of thing. Instead, we want it to be productive. So we need to figure out, what am I looking for when I go through? What do you want me to report on? And then we can discuss those things afterwards. We have to have some feedback, though, because those are areas where walkthroughs fall short because administrators tend to lack in the feedback portion. Professional development, again, is going to be key. A lot of times we forget about things over time as teachers. Reminding ourselves of those things could be very beneficial. And also, education changes over time. Ms. Horton's been in education for a while. Maybe learning some new skills could be very beneficial for her as well. And the last thing that I would do is call Mr. Stafford as well. Obviously, when we left the meeting, it was not on a positive note. So I think we need to try to smooth things over with Mr. Stafford and let him know that we are working diligently to try to improve this situation. Okay, so how can we resolve this issue by making sure that all students are successful? Well, the first thing that's going to make all students successful is to help Mrs. Horton resolve these issues herself. She's going to be the best tool there. If she can become a better teacher, get back to what she was when she was teacher of the year, that's going to be better for all students, because removing just one student is not going to be productive. If the learning environment is bad, then they're all still going to be in that classroom. And also another bad thing about removing one student is we are setting a precedent of a parent comes in and complains or requests, and we're immediately going to remove their student and change their schedule. That's not a precedent that you want to set from the beginning. Okay, we need to reassure them that we are working to try to help resolve this issue. To resolve this issue, the next thing that I would do is make sure that everything that we do, with whether it's the buddy teacher, professional development, is to focus on building relationships. We know that that's one key component of effective schools. Having a good relationship between student and teacher is going to allow for a much more productive learning environment. Providing stress relief is going to help all students be successful. Right now, we have Mrs. Horton seems to be yelling at kids, blowing up on them. How about we provide a situation where she can vent a little bit through either the buddy teacher meetings or meetings with me as an administrator? Ask her what's bothering her today. How can we make that better for you? And then also, all students will be successful if I develop new skills through professional development. By learning new skills, I'm going to increase my teacher toolbox, so to speak, and I'm going to provide effective teaching strategies that are going to help students learn. And then the last thing that might help all students be successful is that if this situation doesn't get better, we may need to consider changing Mrs. Horton's teaching assignment and moving her out and putting a new teacher in. I don't want to do that. However, the student success is very important. If Mrs. Horton works towards that, then we should be okay. However, if she continues to struggle and does not attempt to make changes, we may have to readdress this situation. So what was I thinking as I go through this? Well, first thing I'm thinking is that her behavior was unacceptable. We should not have kids that are crying because they don't want to come to school. We should not have a situation where she's acting unprofessional to parents. Okay, I'm also thinking this needs to change immediately. This can't be something that is a very gradual thing. We know that Mrs. Horton has the ability to do this. She was Teacher of the Year at one point. So this is something that needs to be immediately dealt with. And also, I'm thinking that I believe in this staff. I know that it's been successful. Parents have been pleased. And I know that Mrs. Horton has been Teacher of the Year. So she obviously has the tools available to be able to handle this. So I know she can accomplish this. What am I feeling? Well, I was feeling embarrassed that a parent would have to see this situation go down. I'm feeling empathetic towards Mrs. Horton, realizing, hey, she is in a tough situation. That could be hard for anybody. And I'm also worrisome about the students. I want them to want to come to school, not to dread coming to school. What do I value in deciding what I'm going to do? Well, professionalism. I think professionalism is extremely important for educators. It's important that we interact with our public and our students in a professional manner. That way they're comfortable with being at school. The well-being of students and staff, too, are very important. I want people to be able to feel comfortable coming to either school or work. And then a positive learning environment is something that's valued. Students learn best when they have a positive learning environment. And teachers establish that. We see that through effective schools. So we need to get to that point. So based on this plan, what's still unresolved? Well, the staff interactions still are not resolved. We know that Mrs. Horton has had issues with staff. We'll have to talk with her about that. I think students are the most important first. It's still unresolved what her future is. If Mrs. Horton does well and progresses, shows improvement, then hopefully we'll get her turned around. However, if she does not improve and continues to have issues to the point where we would need to remove her from class, we may need to consider if we would want to renew Miss Horton or not. Her dislike of the reading program. Even though we've talked with her once about it, I don't know that we've given her the opportunity to express why she is against it. So she could talk about that a little bit. And how is this going to impact our test scores? We know test scores have been good for our school overall. Is this negative interaction going to cause a problem with those? How can we promote academic success by enhancing instructional capacity? Well, we know that teachers hold the biggest impact on learning. And by helping her develop her teaching skills and providing a better environment, we are going to help all students be successful. We're giving her tools to increase her capacity. Those practices can be learned through either the buddy teacher feedback. We know that feedback is a key component of learning. And so through feedback from myself or the buddy teacher, that can help her a little bit as well. And also, if we had to reassign her for a better environment, that better environment would open up new instructional capacity tools for those students by a new teacher being there. Promote the well-being of every student. Well, by meeting before class and not letting her go to class, I'm not putting her in a situation where it could be negative to students. By building relationships, we know that that's going to cause the well-being of students. They all learn better and perform better when they have a positive relationship. By providing outside stress relief, we are not letting her go to classroom where she could blow up on kids, and the potential reassignment as well would be better for all students if it continues to be a negative aspect. So, how do we enhance instructional capacity? Professional development. It gives you some new tools. Feedback from observations. Feedback is a key component to learning. By collaborating with the buddy teacher, collaboration is a key component to developing new ideas and new tools, so we're enhancing her instructional capacity there as well. So, this is an outline of what I plan to do in this situation. Hopefully, it will cause Mrs. Horton to have a productive teaching assignment where she improves her learning and does much better. All right, thanks, guys.